Hi team, Coach Azza here, back with you for a very special ViPR edition of Exercise Explored. Now with Exercise Explored, we've been looking and uncovering and exploring and expanding our knowledge and our creativity on a bunch of exercises. But today we're going to focus specifically with ViPR, and we're going to focus on a specific movement with ViPR. It's a ViPR classic. And we're going to be today looking at Exercise Explored with the ViPR Lunge and Uppercut. So the ViPR Lunge and Uppercut, what is a lunge uppercut? It looks like this. So it's a fantastic whole body exercise that really does plug in everything from toes to nose. It's a classic, it's a ViPR classic. When you go on a course, when you look on social media, it's one of the first things you see is a ViPR lunge and uppercut. It's what everyone looks for. So what does the lunge and uppercut actually do? Well, when we think about the nature of the lunge and uppercut and we break it into its two constituent parts, we first think about the lunge. Well, lunge is obviously a great lower body exercise. It's great for balance, it's great for coordination, and it's great for mobility, as well as building strength through the front side, the back side of the legs, the hips, the calves. We're getting mobility from all the way from the feet to the ankles to the knees and hips as well. So as far as the lower body is concerned and that part of the movement, it's a real bang for your buck exercise. What do we get with the uppercut, this top half of the movement? If we look at the uppercut just on its own, we're looking at taking it in its classic format from the hip to the opposite side shoulder. So because we're taking it from one side of the body across to the other side of the body, we're getting that rotational demand. So we're getting lots of great rotation through the spine, which is great for spinal mobility, but also mimics what we have to do and how we move our upper body in everyday life. It really does connect the core unit to the upper torso with the shoulders and the shoulder blades as well. As we think about this uppercut movement, with one side we're looking at driving, we're looking at working anterior strength and we're exploding through the anterior, whilst on the other side we're having to work and pull through the posterior side. So we're getting all this amazing kind of what we might term cross sling action. Now, when we put the two together, traditionally, we see the movement as when I'm starting on my right hip here, and I'm going to step forwards with my left foot. So again, I'm getting that right arm drive with that left foot drive, which again mimics loads of stuff in everyday life, including when we walk. When we walk, if I place my left foot in front, it's my right hand that swings forward to counteract and to help momentum and everything else, and help efficiency when I walk or when I run or when I do plenty of activities in sport and everyday life as well. Even if I'm thinking about bending down to pick something up in front of me, I'm less likely to bend down this way. I'm more likely to be able to get a better movement and better use of my body when I go opposite to opposite. So it really is great at kind of feeding in function, feeding in strength to that function to help us live everyday healthy lives. But it's also fantastic exercise because it's whole body. It's going to get a massive burn on too. You're going to get that metabolic burn if you're going for long periods of time or up in your intensity, and you're going to get a great strength output if you start to work on the weights, the holds, the leverages that we can use with the ViPR. So that's the lunge and uppercut as a movement. And what we're going to do today is we're going to explore different ways that you can work on the lunge and uppercut so that it really does suit your members. It suits your clients' needs, and it is more functional for the person in front of you. Function is only as good as the person that is working on that function. So we need to be aware, and we need to have some ideas and some more tools in our toolbox when it relates to every single movement we do in the gym. And today, it's all about the lunge uppercut. So let's begin exploring our lunge uppercut by firstly talking about weight. We know with ViPR that we have everything from 2 kg all the way up to 20 kg. And I've got a selection of 4, 6, 8, 10 and a 16 sitting here as well. Now, we know with ViPR, it's more about movement quality and kind of trying to find that blend of demand versus quality. So when I'm selecting the right weight for a lunge uppercut for myself, if I was to pick the 4 kg, the purple, and I was to go through it, I feel like I'm getting something out of it. Maybe if I'm looking for a bit of vitality or a bit of reconditioning, really focusing on the movement rather than the load of the ViPR and the mass and momentum that I can get going with it, I might pick the 4. But for me, to really start to, as we know with ViPR, we like to integrate that mass and momentum. We like to help drive it, because if we drive it, we've then got to control it. And therefore, for me to get some demand and to try and work on that blend between demand and movement quality, I need to go up through the weights a little. So if I started to now pick up the 8 kg, I'm feeling a little bit more momentum. I'm having to control that on the way down from the lunge. I'm feeling a little bit more load, which actually is also helping me as well. It's making me a little more efficient, but it's also, as we like to train smart. We like to train, not drain, but we've still got to put some demand through the body. So the 8 kg might be a better weight than the 4 kg. But likewise, if I was to go up to 16 kilograms and think about trying to perform 40 to 60 seconds of work, then after a period of time, the movement quality and the speed and the rhythm of the movement and my range of movement may start to deteriorate from what I want to do and what I want to achieve. So it might be that the 16 kg is just too far for me right now. So we're always looking at that demand and movement quality, and we look at the other variables that are available to us, which we're going to explore today, in order to make more of that particular exercise, being the lunge uppercut. Having said that, don't be afraid to use the heavier weights if you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 seconds of work, maybe just a few really good quality, strength-orientated repetitions. Then why not look at trying to move with movement quality, but larger loads? Don't be afraid to go big, but just make sure that when you're selecting your weight, it matches the intensity that you're trying to do, and it matches the variables that you've also put in place for your client. So now let's look at, with the lunge and uppercut, let's look at breaking the movement down a little bit. So if I'm thinking about a strategy, I've got a client who's never used ViPR before, and I want them to be able to use the lunge and uppercut. I know for them, it's going to be a great movement for balance and for a little bit of upper body strength. So I'm thinking, okay, the lunge uppercut is a really good exercise for this person. So how would I teach this to begin with? Now, this gives us options, and this gives us a way of actually starting to diversify the exercise. So what I could start by doing is just keeping the weight on my hip and get a few lunges going. Once I'm comfortable with the lunge starting in that position, I could start to build the movement up. I don't have to go whole body integrated straight away. We can start by isolating. So I can start here, then do the uppercut, and then return. And you know what? By working this way, I get to be really specific with my length and depth of my lunge, with my direction of my lunge. And I also get to be really specific with then the movement quality of the uppercut. So it is actually a really good exercise regardless of the level of client and how experienced they are at the particular movement, by breaking down the exercise into its parts and then building it back to the fully integrated version. We can obviously start to think about, well, that now becomes 2 slightly different exercises, and it takes my client on a journey from A to B. So far, we've only looked at the unilateral version. So we've looked at a one-sided lunge and uppercut where we keep performing and repeating the reps on the same side. So another way that we can change the lunge uppercut, expand it, explore it, is by making it an alternate side lunge and uppercut. And again, there's a couple of ways that we can do this. So if I show you from this front view, I can break it down somewhat and bring it to the side, take my time, have these nice start and finish points to the movement to begin. This is a great way to start to coach your members into being able to go from a unilateral lunge and uppercut to that alternating lunge and uppercut. And then once I've got that there, I can then start to become a little bit more fluid with my movements and a bit more sweeping with the ViPR, which is increasing the demand coordination-wise, heart rate and threshold, as well as balance and strength through the legs as well as the torso. So again, think about that spectrum of coaching and taking our clients on a journey. We can start with segmented lunge uppercut unilateral, build then to integrated, then split it up and break it down a little bit for the bilateral, the alternate, and then build towards integrated again. Then you've got a number of weeks, 8, 12, 16 weeks worth of lunge uppercut work straight away where your client's going to feel like they're improving and they're doing something fresh every couple of weeks. Now let's take a look at threshold. How can we influence threshold and explore that to start to diversify the lunge and uppercut? Now, one way that we can do this is start to look at potentially a plyometric type exercise or an explosive lunge uppercut. So what I mean by that would be one of these. Notice that I've taken the weight down. The intensity has gone up through other things, through the threshold of the movement, through the explosiveness, the speed of the movement, the complexity of it. So because of that, I've decided to go lighter on the ViPR so that I can focus in on speed and quality of movement. Now at the moment, I'm doing unilateral. And again, we know that then, if we get really good at it, we can start to break it down, but keep it and start to work on an alternate. And then if we get really integrated, we can then switch from side to side without that stop up at the top in the middle. And as you can tell from my breathing, after just 20 seconds or so of movement, we can really start to elevate that lunge uppercut and take it from potentially an endurance exercise, a strength exercise, and now into a power exercise with that loaded movement training. So we started to unbox and unravel some more ideas to freshen up and keep progressing or regressing, taking our lunge uppercut on the journey that it needs to go on to suit our members. And now let's start to look at a real great way. This is a way that I love to start varying the movement up, understanding that it has a significant impact on our clients and the particular exercise, which is starting to play with the hold of the ViPR. Now, so far, you've seen me utilizing the neutral hold of the ViPR, so hands on both of the handles. Now we can start to play around with it. We could go narrow, and if we work narrow through the handles, then the hands themselves go through a smaller range of movement, and there is a smaller width and therefore a smaller leverage in the hands, so therefore less demand on the shoulders. So straight away, by taking from neutral into a narrow hold, you begin to change. But with this, I find that you get a little bit more pace on your uppercut, so you can bring a bit more speed to the uppercut by taking that narrow grip. With a narrow grip as well, for a lot of us, that then brings the hands inside shoulder width, which again starts to get a little bit more engagement through the front side, the anterior part of the upper body. So there are starting to find subtle changes that make a big difference, even by just changing the width. We could go likewise, we could go with a wide hold with that lunge uppercut, and by taking it through that wide hold, I've now got much greater demand. As I'm taking it through wide, I've got a much greater demand going through the shoulders, going through my thoracic spine mobility. If I'm here, I don't have to turn with the narrow hold. I don't have to turn through my spine and through my shoulders all that much to get the movement done. Whereas if I go here and start to work it, you can see how much more rotation my upper body has to go through to get the job done. That's going to increase the demand, obviously through the upper body musculature, stability and mobility, but also then there's a much greater demand on stability through the lower body as well. The glutes, because of added rotation, the glutes are getting wound up more. They're getting wound up more and getting involved more. They're also having to get involved more because I'm in this much more off balance position because of all the leverages. So again, by taking it from narrow then to wide, we can massively change the impact and the effect of the exercise. One that I like to work with is then working on the offsets, and there's two ways that we can work this offset uppercut. So at the moment, I've got that offset hold, and the length or the increased leverage and weight being on my right hand, sweeping through and driving through, is driving and pulling me forwards. So with that momentum and that mass, I'm then having to out here, my back line of my body, my posterior chain, is then having to work harder to decelerate me and stop me continuing forwards in order to keep me in a good movement quality position and then to return me back for another rep. So by taking the leverage, changing the leverage to the length of the leverage to one end of the ViPR, we start to feel a change through the fascia and the lines that are being influenced. Likewise, if I now keep it on the same side but take the weight to my left hand, so there's more weight distributed through my left side now, and all of a sudden that weight is being thrown over my shoulder. So at the bottom of this movement here, my front side is now having to work to stabilize me. It's loading a little bit more, and that front side includes the front side of the hip here. So by throwing that weight over my shoulder now, I'm getting more stability and more kind of waking up of the front side muscles instead. So subtle changes, which it does matter. Which hand, which leverage, it all makes a difference. So be specific with your clients if you want a specific outcome. So there's another way we can start to look at the different holds to then influence how we change the lunge uppercut. So far with the lunge and uppercut, we've been looking at working that opposite side forward driver from the foot and that forward driver from the opposite side hand. So if we look at the body from left to right, it's my left foot stepping forwards and it's been my right hand performing that uppercut movement. So we're interlinking the chain across the body. Now, can we do it the other way? Can I start by stepping forwards with my left foot, but change where the ViPR starts and where the ViPR finishes? Now it's on the same side. I'm rotating the same way. So now with this movement, as I step forward with my left foot, my hips are rotating towards the right. But also, if I start on my left hip with the ViPR, as I perform that uppercut, my torso is now turning to the right and rotating to the right as well. So this would be considered a same side lunge and uppercut. And what that then starts to do is it starts to influence less through the glute on potentially my left side, and it's going to get me opening and stretching a little bit more through the front side of my right leg. It's also getting me to start to open up and turn on and stretch the inner thigh on this left leg. So rather than the outer thigh and glute, when we go this way, I'm now getting inner thigh and the back front side here whilst going through this. So what we do with the hands and changing the handprint or the way the sides that we're working same side rotation, can massively start to change where we're going to feel that lunge uppercut. So we can go here to here. We can also, there's also another variable we can play with. If we go back to our opposite side movement, I can, instead of lunging and uppercutting at the same time, I could start by going for a lunge and then uppercutting on the way back up. And what you're going to get there is a similar outcome to when we looked at that same side, because here my hips have gone through left rotation. So on the way back up, as I uppercut towards and go through right rotation with my uppercut, I'm also, because I've started in left rotation with the hips, I'm going through right rotation of the hips now as well. So I get a similar outcome by working in a different sequence as I do when I work same-sided. So I find that really interesting. I find, well, that's great, because if my client can't do it one way, perhaps I can get the same reaction by working the other way. Now we're starting to think smart. Now we're starting to find ways that we can get our clients from A to B much smarter and much more efficiently. So there's a really great couple of examples there that we don't have to always go for this opposite side lunge and uppercut. We can actually go same side. And then with that, we can start to, as we go same side, we can then start to roll out the alternates. We can then start to roll out the plyometrics and everything else with a brand new style and a brand new outcome involved. So now let's take a look at how the handprint can influence the lunge and uppercut differently. So I'm going to start by looking at, and the handprint is kind of where the hands start and where the hands finish. So let's take a look at the regular lunge and uppercut. My hands are starting with my right hand just behind hip length and my left hand here. And as I step forwards, I'm ending up with my right hand and my left hand about shoulder height. And my right hand is about a thigh's distance in front. So it's not even as far. My right hand comes into here. So if we were looking at the distance of the hand, it's still pretty close to the body. So thinking about that, if we're coaching that, we would just say a normal distance with a ViPR. Now what I can start to do, whilst keeping the same hold, I can start to change the handprint. And the first thing we can look at is distance. Now the distance of the handprint, if I start to wind up a little more, so I start with my left hand at hip distance and then take through into the same length forwards, I'm starting to get a little bit more load through my backside. I'm loading up. I'm having to load up through rotation a little more. I'm having to load up and stretch through the arms or shoulders in different ways. And then I'm then forced to control more momentum on the way through. So I'm getting a bigger load, which means a bigger explode, which means I've then got to load better in the forward position to explode and get back again. So we can start to think about that subtle difference on the way back. We can also think about the distance on the way forwards. I can start to outstretch my hand, and this is a very extreme difference. I'm now looking at, rather than here with the front hand, I'm then looking at that right hand extending fully. Now, if I do that, I've then got to load and stabilize at the end range of movement a lot more through the hips, through the torso, and through the upper body, the arms, the biceps and everything else in order to complete that movement. I can then put the two together. I could go maximum range with the handprint and start back and drive forwards, start all the way back and drive forwards. Now you can see it's much harder for me to keep movement quality. So maybe with this one, I would, if I was going for a larger range of movement with a handprint, I might look at utilizing a lighter load of ViPR, because we know that intensity, or the amount the muscles have to work, isn't just influenced about how much you carry and how much you lift with ViPR, but it's how you lift, the direction, and the leverage and the hold and everything else we've already talked about. Another way I can start to work on this uppercut, rather than uppercut and finishing with the width just over shoulder, I can now begin to take that uppercut a little further around the corner. So you can see the width has gone from here out to here, here, in close, out wide. Still going through the same pattern, still going through that uppercut, but that uppercut is finishing much more round the corner. More demand from the upper body going through rotation, but therefore, because of that, more demand through the hips and the stability of the lower body to be able to execute the movement. So again, I can start to play with the distance angulation, I can start to play with width angulation, and I can also begin to play with the height angulation. So rather than finishing with the ViPR horizontal, I could start to take the end of the ViPR higher, which means I end up in a greater stretched position through this back hip. So if we're looking at performing a ViPR uppercut for hip mobility, I'm stepping forwards with my right foot now, which means I'm trying to influence a bit more mobility at the front of the left hip. If I begin to take that ViPR higher up and finish it in a higher position, now I'm getting a greater load and a greater amount of mobility through the front side of the hip because of that stretch up through the torso. Then because of it being up here, I'm then having to decelerate back to the start position, and there's more demand on that section of the lunge uppercut. So again, we can look at all those angulations to start to influence how easy, how hard, and how different we can make the lunge uppercut. So that's enough chat from me today, team. Hopefully that's inspired you, opened up, unraveled that box, which is the lunge uppercut, and it started to give you some ideas so that you can begin to think about your clients a little bit more specifically, become more bespoke as a trainer, as a group exercise instructor, depending on the group or the individual that you have in front of you. So what I'm going to do to finish off today is I'm going to run through some other variations. We'll allow you to decide what you think they do, but starting to think about those principles with ViPR, that we work and harness with gravity and ground force reaction, that we utilize mass and momentum to help us find the right demand, and that we utilize that whole body integrated approach in 3D in order to enhance the performance and the health of the people we work with. So guys, I'm going to leave you now with some more variations that you can do with the lunge uppercut. If you like today's video, there are a couple of ways that you can learn more from us. You can check out fitpro.com/blog and search Exercise Explored for more exercise ideas. You can also check out viprfit.com for more ViPR specific information, blogs and education. You can also check us out on @FitPro or @ViPR Global on all the relevant social media links. We hope you enjoyed today and look forward to sharing another ViPR blog with you and another exercise explored with you very soon.